Right, so I'd like to introduce Kevin and Amy, or ask you to introduce yourself and start the session for today. So thank you very much that you joined our practice again. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tobias. And we want to say hi to everybody. And before I forget, we want to thank you we know most of you probably are doing this in a second language, and we so appreciate that you're making the time and space for this evening, even though it might not be perhaps as simple and straightforward as you're used to. Having said that, if at any time you have a question or a comment, just please feel free to put it in the chat, and we can hopefully keep an eye on that, because we want to make sure that you get the information you need and have everything be clear. It's such a pleasure to be back. We were here last year, and we are so supportive of the work that AVE is doing, and particularly these Wednesdays, which Tobias was saying has been going on for almost about a year now, and how important that is to be able to connect with community. And even, it's online and we're still in this very difficult time in the world, but having this time and space together to connect with people who share similar ideals and values is really helpful, that we can be here in this way and to support each other. And we see actually a couple of familiar faces and even some familiar names from some emails that we've received. So it's just really great to have you here, and wonderful, like I said, that we can connect this way. The evening will be a combination of some information, actually. The topic of teaching mindfully, and Kevin in a moment will give us a bit of a small lecture about it, but we're going to, of course, build that in with mindfulness practice and breakout discussion as well. And just briefly, who I am, in case this is the first time that you've met me online. We live now in Spain, and I'm a high school teacher. I taught high school English and humanities for many years, and 8 years ago stopped working in the classroom so that Kevin and I could work with our organization Mindwell to support teachers in schools in mindfulness and social emotional learning. And the mindfulness really helped me in my personal life, and then it spilled over to my professional life, and I was like, oh, teaching seems more rich now that I've had this practice. So that was the work that I continue to do and that we do now.
And good night, everybody. And yeah, like Amy, very, very excited to be here with this group, and some of you new, and some people from before as well. And my name's Kevin Hawkins. I'm from England originally. I used to be a social worker, and then I became a teacher, and I taught in state schools in the UK, and then taught in Africa in a school in Tanzania for about 10 years. And then for about 15 years, I was in Prague in the Czech Republic as a principal of a middle school, international middle school. I started teaching mindfulness to students and parents and teachers from around about 2008, after actually, again, from like Amy, finding it for myself through a personal crisis at that time, and then found it so valuable for me personally. I started to then, after a while, share it with students and my school community, and have been doing this work ever since then. So before we go any further, we would love to invite you just to join us in a very short kind of arrival practice, just to this evening, just to see if we can let go a little of the busyness of our day and just come together in this virtual environment, but in a way that we can really connect and be aware that we are sharing this time and this space with others. So just perhaps take 2 or 3 more conscious breaths, inhaling and exhaling. Just dropping into awareness, if that's possible, whatever works for you in terms of just grounding and settling yourself for a moment. Perhaps noting the physical sensations in the body. If you notice any areas of tension or tightness, just giving that area a little bit of extra care for a moment. Seeing if you can breathe into it, just softening around any tension. Being open to any physical sensations, the breath coming and going, feeling of the feet, the solidity of the body, any warmth or coolness. Maybe noticing any pleasant sensations or feelings in the body or the heart. Just allowing the breath to come and go. Allowing the busy day to be behind us now. And just bringing our attention to being here right now. Being here in the body, heart, and mind. And just doing a stretch or just letting go of that any way you need to. Little movement. Thank you.
Actually, I'll step out because Kevin's gonna do this next part, and I'll come back in
Sure.
in a little bit.
Okay. You'll be here.
I'm right here, just off screen.
Okay. So, welcome again. If people have just joined while we're doing the practice, and as Tobias was saying, we joined this group in June last year, I think it was, and at that time, lockdown had been going for some time in Spain, where we are living now, and it was hitting Germany as well. We didn't really expect that even now, this many months after that last session, that we would still be dealing with such difficult circumstances for everybody. And for teachers, it's been a real challenge, I believe. And last time we were looking at, the disruption. Could we learn something from this disruption? And it is a challenge, isn't it? Both a personal challenge and a professional challenge. And many of you, like we have had family who've had to deal with COVID, distances, unable to see people. I haven't seen some of my kids for over a year now. It's been a very difficult time. And then some of you have been managing, like we have online training, and then the pressures of teaching, sometimes in school, sometimes not in school. This has been a real challenge. One thing we did look at last time was that the one silver lining was an increased attention to the importance of social emotional learning, of taking care of ourselves and of our students, of making sure that we don't just go straight to teaching and trying to go back to normal so quickly, but that we do really make room in our lessons, in our day in school, for moments of quiet and calm, and of checking in with ourselves and each other, of really valuing our emotional state and emotional intelligence, as well as our IQ and intellect as well, a real combination of heart and mind. And not to forget the body, even in online teaching. So, talking of the body, our intention this time is to, this word embodied, I'm not sure if that translates very well in German, maybe it does, into the body. embodiment, but we talk about this a lot in mindfulness practice. And our idea tonight is to look at how can we bring a mindfulness practice more into our day, into our work, into our relationships, and into our teaching, and it coming in through the body so that we embody this sense of presence and curiosity and kindness in the way that we are, or try to be in our intention of how we are from one moment to the next. And of course, we want to look at how we can do this. We're calling this teaching mindfully, mindful teaching, which can be done, of course, online as much as in different ways, but it can be achieved online as well as in live teaching with people as well. We can bring this attention to our own presence. And perhaps in some ways online, we need to take even a bit more care with that so that we can really feel that connection with the people that we're teaching and connecting with. So how do we bring a more embodied presence into our day? We know that we need to take care of ourselves, but these things are not easy to do. I'm just going to share my screen with you now for a few moments so that you can see a few pictures and slides that we've got here. It's mostly images and ideas. So yeah, just to stress this time of difficulty for teachers and dealing with stress in a personal and professional way. And so we know we need to take care of ourselves, but of course it's not easy to do. And we are stressed at that same time. It really is a practice. And how can we begin to bring this more into our daily lives? And the way that we work with educators normally is to really focus on these three key aspects that overlap so much with mindfulness and education. That of course the foundation is being mindful, and that when we begin to practice this ability to sense into how I feel, into my physical sensations, into noticing my mind and a wandering mind and bringing it back to the moment, this can really begin to play into my work and into the way that I teach, so I can teach more mindfully. And these two together really supply the foundation for those of us that really want to go on and share this more with students, to teach mindfulness to students and colleagues as well. It's really talking about here transferable skills. So anything that we learn in this way in our practice can be brought into not just our teaching, but into our lives and into the way that we work and relate with each other. So I wanted to start off by talking about Denmark, because I know that AVE has a connection with Helle Jensen, who's done a lot of work in teacher training in Denmark and is working in Germany as well. And that was the first time that Amy and I really saw a teacher training program that tried to bring this idea of embodied presence, mindful awareness, into our teaching day. And it was done very beautifully in Denmark, where they already put some emphasis on emotional, relational competence in their teacher training. So we looked at a program there and visited it being taught in Aarhus, in the university there, and saw that in the teacher training program, they found ways to bring this mindful awareness into the teachers' training. And those teachers could then bring it into their school day, especially to reflect on their state of mind and state of emotion before they go into a classroom, or dealing with difficult situations that might be challenging, learning how to not overreact in those moments. This can be really helpful for young teachers, or any age teacher who is learning these skills and applying them in the way that we manage student behavior as well. So these things can be directly applicable. And this is what one of the teachers who did that training in Denmark said. She said that for me as a teacher, the training helped me to wait a little in challenging situations. It's not that it takes away the emotions. I can still get very irritated and annoyed, but it helps me to not react and to keep the feelings to myself and not react on my students. I think in the long term, it's very helpful for teachers. And I guess in some ways it makes you more resilient too. And that's the kind of feedback we've had from many teachers since we realized how important this is to bring into our own teaching. And so for ourselves and for our students, we see that understanding ourselves. How does my mind work? How does my body work? How do my feelings and emotions work? These are key life skills, both for young people to be learning, but also for us as teachers to reflect on and become more familiar with. And if we want our students to have this balance of health and well-being, they need physical education and mental education, social emotional education. These areas of heart, mind, and body are equally important. And if we want that for our children, we know we need it for ourselves. And it's very tempting to rush to try and teach this to kids. The importance of ourselves and our own mindfulness practice and relating and being the way that we want to be in order to model it and be able to teach this more effectively for children. I'm not going to talk very long about this tonight, but just to say that teaching mindfully is a subject that we bring up quite a lot in our book, which is available in German. So I just wanted to see that, because it is going to be very brief, this next bit, but just to give you an idea of the kind of things that we usually focus on in our trainings. We also divide teaching mindfully into 3 key areas as well. So we look at stress management, we look at improving the learning environment in our school, how it can be impacted, and we look at the impact we can have on individual students as well. So just to start briefly with that first one, by practicing being mindful, we begin to learn how to notice our stress, to soften those areas of tension, and to manage our stress more effectively, to find greater balance in ourselves and during our day. And this also has been my experience in many teachers. This helps us feel more connected. We can connect more easily with our students through doing this as well. And like me, I don't know, I really found I began to enjoy my teaching much more, that sense of the privilege of connecting with young people and colleagues that I began to lose a little bit before that, as I began to nearly burn out at certain times. And in this area, we know there's quite a bit we can draw on to support our understanding of it. This is from Dan Siegel in a foreword to a book I'll show you in a minute. But Dan Siegel said that keeping our own well-being in mind is essential in creating an optimal learning environment. And he wrote this in the foreword, having read the book by Louis Cozzolino, which pulled together a lot of the learning on attachment theory, on neuroscience, and how it applies to us educators in our daily setting. And if you haven't seen the book, I'd recommend it. It's very helpful, but I've summarized it for us here. Save you reading it. For me, really what stood out from the book is that how we teach is just as important as what we teach. And from a scientific aspect, because of the way that our brains are wired, because of our evolutionary history, our students are always connecting to us in ways that go beyond our idea of what is the curriculum that we want to teach. We have this ability to shape the brains of each other, of our children when they're infants, but also of our students when we are teachers. So it really comes back to the quality of our relationships, that we can optimize our learning environment, but we first need to start with this idea of relationship. So to bring this embodiment into our day, what helped me was to really notice physical sensations, to notice where I'm feeling stress in the body, to use my body as like an early warning system that gives me an increased sensitivity that then we can perhaps apply to our learning environment and notice what is the atmosphere of the room and of our students today, really beginning to apply this being mindful in a way of teaching more mindfully. And there's also some research that supports this, that we know that from the CARE research in the USA, that teachers who have done just a 4-day training, I think, in the CARE program noticed a decrease in their stress symptoms, an increase in emotional regulation. They felt less sense of time pressure in the day. And they also noticed, without training anything for the classroom, that there was an impact that could be seen through some quite rigorous research in the classroom. Greater emotional support for students was observable, and there was an improvement in classroom organization, even though the training had nothing to do with that at all directly. So how we are affects the way that we teach. And the second area that we look at moves straight from this area, that when we begin to be more embodied, we can optimize the learning environment for our students. We can provide safety. We know that our students can't learn without safety. Emotional safety, and we can begin to fine-tune this and really bring a sense of group community and a sense of holding a group and holding a space for our teachers through a greater presence and awareness. We can also become more sensitive about how we change the learning environment. We can make our students a little bit calmer when they're too energetic, or we can energize them perhaps when they're too sleepy and apathetic. So we can use these skills in changing lessons, in using the to notice, and then bringing that to the way that we are just fine-tuning the learning for our students, changing activities, changing pace, changing tone of voice. It can be done in so many different ways that teachers do instinctively, but we can improve these skills through trainings and awareness. And we can learn to just season the school day more so that we bring these moments of check-in and just a little bit of physical movement and some breath work or some listening activities as well into our day. Just these short moments can make a huge difference. And finally, this third area that we look at with our students is this area of individual student attunement. And I'm not going to go into it very much now because of time. I think would be better to move on, perhaps. But yeah. Just want to say that we in our book we explain this a little bit more, but we know that from how we are allows more students to connect to us more deeply on a level that helps them fill in some gaps in their social and emotional skills. And just have a look in the book if you get a chance and look at this video from Ian Wright. We'll put it in the chat for you later about this footballer in the UK, how he was helped by his primary school teacher to become a mature adult. Just the powerful impact of a teacher who was present for him at important time that allowed him to become a fully functioning adult and to grow up in a way that he wouldn't have been able to do because he missed some of those areas in his own upbringing. So we're not here saying that we all need to be perfectly embodied every day. It's not about perfection. It's about connection, how we connect to ourselves, connect to our students, so that we begin to shift the focus in our schools and in our classrooms. But we start this in ourselves and we bring it into our teaching, which affects our students and our schools, and eventually even the culture of our schools, which I know is a really strong intention from AVE to impact the way that German schools are functioning as well. So I'm going to just pause here, having given you a little bit of input. And I would like to, we're going to move Amy and I into this next half of the session, really just to focus on two areas. One is practical ideas of bringing this into our body and into the day. And secondly, to allow you some time to discuss this and give us some feedback on your experiences as well. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen at this moment. And I'm just going to lead us in a short movement practice, and then Amy will take over as well. So if you can stand in a moment, we're going to ask you to stand. If you haven't got, if you're able to just move away from the screen a little bit, that would be helpful. If not, you can do this sitting down if you really need to. But if at all possible, we really encourage you to just stand up. We don't need to be able to see you, but you need to be able to see us on the screen perhaps. So I'm going to stand now and move my screen so you can see me. Yeah, a bit more lighting, that's better. Okay, so hopefully you can still see me and hear me. Okay, so just with the legs hip width apart, just unlocking the knees, and so just standing in a relaxed position, and just check you've got enough room around you as well. And let's just start off just by shaking. So shaking is a great activity, shaking the wrists and the hands and the arms. And you know, this is what athletes do before a race. It's a really good way of turning stress energy into vitality. And you can just bounce into the heels a little bit if you feel like it. Just really giving the whole body a little bit of a shake. And then we'll do the arms a little bit faster, just for a few more seconds. 5, faster, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and then just slowing that down, letting the hands go down, and just you'll be able to feel the energy in the arms if you just tune into that sensation in the body right now. Anywhere you notice any movement of energy. Okay, so just noticing, checking in with the body. And let's just do a little bit of a Qigong looseness. So keeping the shoulders and neck relaxed, turn from the hips and keep the knees unlocked. And just do this gently, allow the arms to here. So the movement starts with the hips. We're moving from the hips. And allow the arms to knock on the belly and on the lower back. Just knocking across lower back. And then just allow that to unwind. So these little Qigong movements are really helpful for many people in bringing this sense of embodiment. Just in the morning for yourself. Sometimes you can do this even with students, depending on the situation. And then just putting the hands together like this, palms up, coming up through the body, turning the palms over and just pushing up into the sky. Hold it for a moment and then come back down in this way. Nice. So we're going to breathe in as we go up and breathe out as we push. Breathe out and then breathing in again. And up and push. And do this in time with your own breathing if you want to, and letting the hands come down. And you'll naturally exhale when you're pushing your hands away. Just noticing the center of the body, the abdomen, the heart, and the head. Just slowing the movements down. When we slow the movements down, sometimes this can help to just allow the mind to settle down. Okay, and then just bringing that to close again, just check in with the body. And then bring the feet together. Put one hand just on the abdomen area, just open like this. And we're just going to do a centering activity whereby we just bring one hand out and watch it come around. And then the palm comes to the center through the head, heart, and the abdomen. And then watch the other one. Straight through the central line of the body. You can tune this in with your breath if you feel ready to do that as well. Sync it with your breathing. Breathing in and breathing out as you come down. Breathing in and breathing out as you come down. And just be aware of the head and the heart and the abdomen area. And then both hands over the abdomen area, feet together, and just bamboo in the wind. So it's just allowing the body to just rock and sway a little bit. Perhaps any little bits of tension, just unwinding a little bit as you can. Just a natural kind of movement with the body increasingly centered.
And I'm going to take over now as you are still standing here in your bamboo in the wind, slightly rocking. Feel free to, if you ever need to open your eyes, to do that. And I'm just going to invite you now to, you can let the hands go and maybe just step your feet apart so that you're standing in a way that feels supportive and comfortable. And again, with the knees slightly bent. And what Kevin did there with some of that Qigong, it's like a formal practice that can be really helpful, as he mentioned, to help us to continue to connect with our bodies. So we really encourage those types of movements as part of your formal practice. But we also want to sort of transition and see how that can actually help you when you are actually in the middle of teaching or about to teach. And so I want to transfer that now into this standing, which is just your normal way of standing, but again with the knees slightly bent. And I'll give you a few minutes of a practice here, of a support and soften practice, which can then be really shrunk down into like a 10-second micro practice. So I'll give you the longer version first, which is standing here, and you might want to spread your toes out if you can. I know I often forget about my toes, but spreading them out, and if you lean forward a little bit, they will grip the floor so that you'll tune into your toes a bit more. And if you lean back, you feel the heels. And if you lean to one side, you'll sense the pressure of the weight of the body on the side of one foot. And again, to the other one, and bringing it the attention right down to that connection. Because what we're looking for, you can come back to center now, what we're looking for is the ability to connect with our feet to the floor, to this idea of being supported by the earth. And that sensation of support, you can let that grip of your toes go a little bit and just sort of stand a bit more normally. But you can see how a very small circle that you could do, a tiny, tiny circle, if you were teaching, if you're actually in front of people, could actually bring you a little bit more into your body. But if you come to a bit more stillness now, I want you to sense into that support. So the bottom of your feet are being held by the earth. And you bend your knees and sink a bit into that earth. And we'll just draw the attention slowly up the body, noticing other areas of support. So through the ankles and into the bones of the lower leg and the knees, and the bones of the upper legs, connecting into the hip sockets and the pelvis, and the whole bowl of that pelvis, connecting also the lower half of the body to the upper half of the body through the base of the spine. Really sensing into this built-in support system you have of these bones that run through your body to the low back, and connecting in as best you can with the sense of that spine, right from the base of the skull, base of the back, up through the middle of the back, up to the base of the neck, and connecting in with that skull. And then how the shoulders also connect down and through the arm bones, all the way to the tips of your fingers. So for a moment, really sensing into the support from the earth, and then the support of your skeletal structure that's actually holding this body that we can aim to soften around. So my friend calls this, it's like imagining that our muscles and skin is like a shirt that we would hang on a hanger, right? So imagining that your shoulders are like a clothes hanger, and that we just allow the body, particularly at the shoulders and arms, to settle around the bones just like a shirt would settle on a clothes hanger. So that we're learning to soften a little bit, even though we are also supported, so that there's strength and softening at the same time. So again, tuning into all the areas of the body that support you, starting from the floor up through all the bones, and then allowing the the rest of the body just to settle loosely around the bones. So this soften and support practice, that's, a few minutes long, but just take a moment now. Actually, I'll just invite you to give it a little shake out of an arm and a little shake out of a leg, because we've been standing there for a while. Shake that out. And maybe take, 2 steps back from your computer. And imagine that you are taking 2 steps forward to begin teaching, whether it's online or in your class, and do a micro practice. So 10 seconds, a soften and support, or a support and soften. So support, whatever that means to you, and then allowing a softening to happen as well. Literally through those muscles and skin. And that can be done before you teach, before you, if you're standing at your sink, washing the dishes. These little micro practices can happen at any time. And I'll invite you to bring that now back to a sitting posture. So if you come to sitting now and get yourself sorted for a minute. So we're trying to find ways that we can bring these kinds of ideals of the mindfulness practice more fully into our own days. And I find the longer formal practices really helpful for me when then I need to do a tiny micro practice, and remembering to do those tiny practices is part of the whole game, right? Because we can have the intention to do it, and it takes a while for us to continually have the habit of doing it. And one last one, even if maybe if a student is responding to you, whether you're standing or seated, you can also just do a micro practice like that while you're listening to a student respond to you. Check into the support of the chair, allow some softening, right? So these are portable practices that help us to come back into the body. And really, it is our formal practice that helps us. And so we want to just take a moment to invite you to have a short discussion about this in your breakouts. We actually have one question to organize some of the discussion, which is, how have you noticed your teaching or your work being impacted by your personal practice? And to make sure podcast, just to say again, how have you noticed your teaching or work being impacted by your personal practice? So there's 12 minutes for breakout. We really encourage you to just keep an eye on the time and just have a share about, what have I noticed about my personal practice impacting my life, basically.
2 or 3 people.
Yeah, there'll be 2 or 3 people in each group.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll come back for Q&A.
Welcome back.
Hi, welcome back.
I hope you had enough time for a little discussion there. And we just have a few minutes left, so we would love to hear from you in the chat or verbally any reflections you have from your discussion, or any comments or questions in general that you might want to ask us, or make a comment or a question about teaching mindfully. So if you need to write it in German, I think that would be fine, and Tobias would translate it for us. But we open it up now to you. Anything that anybody wants to write in the chat or to ask us or comment directly, just unmute and speak if you want to.
I liked your idea of micro practice, and I think it's a good invention, or a good idea to start a session or a lesson or whatever with this kind of micro practice.
Yeah.
And I liked the idea to have a more formal, longer practice, and to shorten it down to a micro practice. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Yeah, it was a friend who taught me that, and I use it now in my whole life. Like if I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, my friend says, well, it's a boiling of the kettle practice. Like, so take a moment, but especially with the teaching, like even online teaching. So before you start your class or turn on the computer, just when you're sitting there and you take the to say that than to actually do it, right? We think a 30-second practice, oh, of course, no problem, I'll do that. But it's the remembering and sort of we call it the weaving in to our daily lives, these little practices. But I think that can really help support us. I found that to be the case for myself.
Yeah, it's something we've been exploring a little bit, and you find something that works for you. For me, I do awareness of the body, and then awareness of the heart, and see if I can really allow that sensation to come, and then noticing when I get lost in thought. So, of course, all of those are at the heart of meditation. So you can practice to develop any one of those three, and then in your main practice or during times of the day, and then try and bring it into one breath. Sometimes it's possible, just to get that sense of the wholeness of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will just read two comments from the chat. Nina Maria wrote, I was here for the first time today, and I'm really grateful that I joined and will come back. And it was really helpful for me and supports me in staying connected to my mindfulness practice, also during work.
That's lovely.
Yeah. And Julia writes, also the first time here, it's great to see so many teachers on this way.
Right. And I just saw another comment about the importance of personal practice and that it has an effect, and we should be courageous. Yeah, that it should give us courage as well, that we know that we develop something that can help us. And we don't all practice as much as we want to. It's not always possible in a busy life. But you can practice by bringing these moments to your day as well. It's a valuable way of John Frank Kabat-Zinn always says these days, just before you get out of bed in the morning, just hesitate, spend a few moments just to connect with the body and do a little body scan. That's bringing mindful awareness into life and into our day and into our teaching. Any other comments or questions just before we close?
And I just want to say that, with this work, first of all, the teaching work that you all do, and then building in your mindfulness personal practice, and then, the intention and desire to be teaching mindfully, that with all of these things, to please bring yourself the same kind of care and gentleness that you would bring to a friend who's trying to do all this stuff. I know as teachers, I know for me personally anyway, I knew that we are perfectionists and wanting to make things good all the time, and we have these high standards and expectations for ourselves and others, and that it's okay to just do your best, and if your best is just a little bit, then that's okay. And especially in this time, the world is hard right now, so to be really kind and gentle for yourself. So if your micro practice might just be I'm doing the best I can right now, and a little moment of forgiveness or acceptance is a worthwhile thing to practice now too.
Yeah. So these are not normal times. We can't deliver everything in the normal way, and we shouldn't have to either. So just finding that space to not have to do everything as normal with our students, but to really check in with them and ourselves, and to focus on this area of how are we doing and how are we coping, and helping developers can be such an important part of our connection with our students. So, was that something else there?
Did Erna?
Erna said something. Could you translate Erna's for us? Maybe?
Yes. So she writes like these micro practices help me to take. I just lost the English word for this. Just to make it a little bit less. I just lost the word. Sorry.
Slow down.
Slow down.
To slow down a bit. Thank you very much.
Right.
And it helps me to bring the focus on the kids more. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Thank you, Erna. Nice to see that, and nice to see you, and nice to see everybody here for taking the time out as we started at the beginning of your busy times and busy days to connect. community is very, very important. We support each other in the work we do by connecting in this way.
Yeah.
So Kevin just put something in the chat.
Yeah, the other reason we talk often about teaching mindful teachers is just to underline the importance of the work that we do. The role of the teacher is very powerful and important, and it has a deep impact, and we need to really value ourselves and the work that we do. And if you ever doubted that, have a look at the YouTube video of this Ian Wright that I've just put the link in. You can look at that later. You'll see the body language of this man being reconnected with his primary school teacher that he hasn't seen since he was a child, and just look at the connection that they have and the power that was in that.
Take care of yourself, and that means, you know, taking care of your emotional well-being and your mental well-being. And we just, with this last comment here before we close, Tanya said, would you be in Freiburg in May?
Yeah.
And we will. I think it's online, but we are doing that presentation, yes, in May. And yeah, we hope to see other people as well. And just please, through our website, we've got our emails on there on the contact page. You can email us anytime. Any questions about any of this kind of work, please feel free to contact us. It's our pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And
thanks again to Tobias for inviting us and for the great work that you guys are doing at AVE. So long may it continue.
And before we rush off, just as a community, the invitation is to, as we started, we will end, and just to take 3 deep breaths together before we run away, and maybe hang your body on your shoulders like a clothes hanger. So just 3 deep breaths together. Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Feel free to unmute and say goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kevin and Amy. It has been a pleasure, like always. And I really would encourage everyone to look up your work and to join your programs, but because it's really beautiful what you do. And hopefully we'll see you here in this session maybe later this year again. And for everyone who would like to join the next session, this will be April 28th in 2 weeks. So please come again and share that this is available for everyone who's working with mindfulness in school. So take care, have a good evening, stay healthy, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Alle.
Alle.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao, Amy and Kevin.
Bye.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you.
Bye.